There is a hand crank drill sitting on a shelf at Harbor Freight right now with a $4.99 price tag on it. Most people walk right past that tool because they are looking for batteries or a charger or a replacement for the cordless drill that died last winter. That is fine for most days, but the second the power goes out, every cordless tool you own becomes an expensive paperweight. The problem we are talking about today is not the apocalypse or some extreme movie scenario. We are looking at the simple reality of the grid going down while your batteries are dead and something in your world needs to be fixed. It could be a fence board, a pipe, a hinge, or a lock, and the only thing that matters in that moment is whether you actually have the means to do the work. These 14 tools cost under $5 each at Harbor Freight, and together they let you cut, shape, sharpen, fasten, and ignite. You can build a complete working shop with zero electricity for less than the cost of a single battery pack. I am going through them in order, starting with the simple basics and building toward the ones most people have never even thought to buy. You want to stay for number 13 because that tool has been in continuous use since ancient Egypt and it still costs less than a cup of coffee. Tool 1 is a whetstone, a double-sided sharpening stone with coarse grit on one face and fine on the other is the single tool that keeps every other cutting edge in your shop functional. Your knives, your axes, and your chisels are all going to go dull eventually, and without a way to fix that edge, you are not really cutting anything anymore. A basic whetstone at Harbor Freight runs under $5 and needs nothing but a little water or oil to work, which means it will likely outlast every blade you own. If you only buy one thing from this entire list, you should make it this stone. Tool 2 is a flat bastard file. That name is the actual metalworking classification for a medium cut with a flat profile, and its primary job is shaping metal by hand. You use this to deburr a sharp cut edge, fit a part that is slightly too large, clean up damaged threads, or even bring back the teeth on an old handsaw. An angle grinder might do some of this faster, but that machine needs power, and it removes material way too aggressively for delicate repairs. A file gives you total control, and for under $4, you get a tool that replaces a grinder for almost any repair work you will face. Tool 3 is a round file, which some people call a rat tail file. The flat file is great, but it cannot go everywhere, and that is where the round file comes in to open up holes or fit into curved notches. These are also what you use to sharpen the cutting teeth on a chainsaw chain, so if you run a saw at all, this tool is not optional. A dull chain is both dangerous and slow, but a round file and 10 minutes of your time fixes that problem completely. Tool 4 is a hacksaw with spare blades, and I want to emphasize that the blades are the part that actually matters. The saw frame itself costs almost nothing, but what determines whether it is useful 6 months from now is whether you had the foresight to keep spare blades on hand. Hacksaw blades can cut through metal, plastic, pipe, and even bone, but they do wear out over time. You should buy the saw and grab a 4-pack of blades while you are standing there, because a worn blade does not cut, it just skids across the surface. Tool 5 is a utility knife with snap-off blades. There is nothing glamorous about this one, but a snap-off blade knife ensures you always have a razor-sharp edge available by simply breaking off the dull segment. You do not need any sharpening skills to use this because the blade is doing all the work for you. If you keep 2 packs of replacement blades with it, this tool stays useful indefinitely. Those first 5 tools cover your cutting and sharpening needs, but the next 5 are about fastening and fitting. This is the work that actually holds a repair together once you have finished making your cuts. Tool 6 is that hand crank push drill you saw in the thumbnail. When you press down on the handle, the spiral shaft spins the bit, which means you get a hole without needing a battery, a cord, or a motor. It drives small bits through wood and plastic using nothing but hand pressure, and while most people under 40 have never even touched one, the Amish use them every single day. Before battery drills took over the world, every shop had one of these on the bench, and at $4.99, it is easily the most underrated tool on this shelf. Tool 7 is a scratch-all, and this little thing actually does 3 different jobs with one handle. It marks layout lines that won't wipe away like a pencil mark. It starts a pilot point so your screws don't wander, and it punches through leather or thin metal when you don't want to grab a drill. If you have ever watched a screw skate across a finished surface and strip the head before it even caught the wood, you know exactly why an awl is a permanent fix for that frustration. Tool 8 is a cold chisel, which is basically just a chunk of hardened steel with a ground edge. A cold chisel is what you grab to cut through the materials a file or a saw can't touch, like rusted bolts, old welds, stone, or cast iron. You drive it with whatever hammer you already happen to own, and since it costs about $3, there is no simpler tool on this list, and very few that are more useful when you are in a bind. Tool 9 is a center punch, and its only job is to prevent you from making an expensive mistake. Before you start drilling into a piece of metal or hardwood, you strike the center punch to leave a small divot in the material. That tiny dent stops the drill bit from walking across the surface when it first touches down, which is the difference between a hole in the right place and a ruined project. It is a 10-second step that saves you from having to patch, re-drill, or scrap the entire piece of work. Tool 10 is a small C-clamp, and I like to think of this as the tool that replaces a second person. When you are trying to cut, drill, or glue something by yourself, the work is going to move unless you have a way to hold it down. A C-clamp costs under $4 and acts as a steady hand so you aren't stuck holding the piece with one arm while trying to work with the other. Without one, something eventually slips and your project ends up coming out crooked. Cutting, sharpening, and fastening make up your basic repair core, but these last 4 tools are the ones most people skip entirely. Skipping these steps is the exact reason why so many home repairs don't actually hold, and why DIY projects often look like they were done by someone who didn't know any better. Tool 11 is a wire brush, and you should be using it before you start any repair, any sharpening, or any painting. Rust does more than just look bad because it actually prevents surfaces from making real contact, which means glue won't bond and a file won't cut through the metal cleanly. If you try to sharpen a rusty chisel on a brand new whetstone, you are just going to load that stone with debris and ruin it. A wire brush is the first step every single time, and at under $3, you really ought to have 2 of them. Tool 12 is a small combination square, which is how you stop guessing and start measuring. It marks 90-degree and 45-degree angles, and it tells you if a surface is actually flat before you commit to a cut. Every cut you make without checking a square is just a guess, and those guesses compound until nothing fits together the way it should. Woodworkers and masons have used these for over 100 years because there is no simpler way to verify your lines before you make a mistake you can't undo. Tool 13 is a plumb bob, and this is the one I told you to wait for because it is the ultimate example of a tool that never fails. It is nothing more than a pointed weight on a string, but when you hang it and let it settle, that string shows you a perfectly vertical line every time. The Romans used them to build aqueducts, and the Egyptians used them for the pyramids, and every straight wall or fence post set before lasers existed was done this way. A plumb bob at Harbor Freight costs under $4 and will still be accurate 50 years from now because a weight on a string doesn't need a charge and it doesn't drift. Tool 14 is a spark lighter, which some people call a flint striker. There is no butane cartridge to leak, no battery to die, and no igniter coil that is going to corrode over time. You just drag the striker across the flint wheel to get a spark, and that single moving part is the entire mechanism. It can sit in a junk drawer for 2 decades and work the very second you pull it out because there is nothing inside it to degrade. Whether you are starting a camp stove or a fire in a burn barrel, this is the last ignition tool you will ever need to buy. You can pick up all 14 of these tools for less than $70 total, giving you a full setup for cutting, sharpening, and fastening without ever needing an outlet. Most people overlook the combination square, but it is the one thing every shop actually needs to function. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this series.